It isn't often I think about the early seasons of MLP these days, but when I do, I tend to remember the most quotable lines, the most triumphant character moments, or even just reminisce on how I got interested in the show to begin with. But recently, I noticed something a bit unusual that I hadn't really thought about before. If you compare the early seasons of MLP with what we're being shown now, there's actually a bit of a tone shift, especially in terms of slapstick comedy. For example, in Season 1 you have Rainbow crashing into trees or rocks, or losing control of a sonic rainboom attempt and landing squarely in the middle of Twilight's library. You'd also see Twilight getting repeatedly pummeled by increasingly heavy objects all for the sake of a laugh. We even got to see Pinkie Pie's personality go on quite the unexpected turn. This trend continued on into Season 2, where Fluttershy was wrestling a bear and it turned out to be just a vigorous massage. Twilight gets injured in various ways, all in the hopes of stopping some apocalyptic future. And again, Pinkie Pie has some very over-the-top reactions. But getting into Season 3, this trend started to shift a bit. You'd still get to see Rainbow slamming into a building, but the slapstick was becoming less frequent. Season 4 had even fewer moments, and so on into Season 5, 6, and 7. Why did this change happen? I mean, so many of us in the Brony community got our start in those first few seasons, and it does seem risky to change up the show's formula when those comedic moments were so fondly remembered by fans. But then, maybe it was because the MLP staff were catering more towards the fans that these changes were implemented in the first place. How many of us were hoping to see Fluttershy grow more confident from her experiences? Well, we got our wish, and at the same time, we could never see Fluttershy giving into her fears in quite the same way again. How many of us wanted Rarity to achieve her dream of running a boutique in Canterlot? Again, we got our wish. But at the same time, Rarity needed to mature as a character to make that work, and thus we wouldn't see any more of the over-the-top reactions which were a staple of her character in the early days. We all cheered for Rainbow when she was accepted into the Wonderbolts, and yet, how could we ever see Rainbow smashing into trees and rocks again while still believing that she belongs in a professional flying group? We all wanted these characters to grow and mature, overcome great obstacles and become all the stronger for it. But in order to make that work in the long run, the MLP staff needed to tone down some of their more extreme personality quirks. Where Pinkie Pie reacted like this in Season 1 from believing her friends no longer wanted her around anymore, she instead had a more modest reaction in Season 4 when her friends had difficulty relating to her sister Maud. Their personalities haven't changed so much as just being toned down a bit to make them feel more real. And I will admit, I find myself enjoying them as characters more so nowadays, even with these minor changes. Still, I suppose part of me does miss some of the more over-the-top moments simply because they were so enjoyably over-the-top. But let's be honest here. How many of us could watch Twilight being bombarded with increasingly heavy objects in a Season 7 episode and not question why the writers were suddenly being so cruel to her character? It's because that slapstick tone would feel very out of place nowadays. It is a little unfortunate, but I can at least understand why the MLP staff had to make these changes over the years. What do you think, though? Have you noticed this shift in tone from the early days of MLP compared to the present? Do you believe there are circumstances today which would allow the main six to engage in such slapstick behavior like they used to? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And as per usual, I am Dr. Wolf, and I look forward to hearing from you.